Last weekend, Donald Trump hosted the inaugural summit of the Shield of the Americas, his new military initiative in the Western Hemisphere. Joined by a dozen mostly right-wing leaders from Latin America and the Caribbean at Trump's Doral Golf Resort in Florida, the US president launched a military coalition, which he says aims to eradicate drug cartels that are plaguing the region. The summit took place days after the US conducted a military operation in Ecuador alongside the Ecuadorian armed forces, which could be a sign of things to come. So, in this video, we're going to explain the Shield of the Americas, who's in it, who's conspicuously absent, and the challenges it faces. Claudia Scheinbaum was ranked 24th in our list of the world's most influential people. So in the latest issue of our magazine Too Long, we discuss Scheinbaum's impressive approval ratings, how she's so far deftly handled US President Donald Trump, and why that is a never-ending challenge. That's just one of 72 pages in the magazine, because as always, there's more to Too Long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. While the name Shield of the Americas and its logo feels straight out of a comic book, perhaps with a hint of Paw Patrol, the summit appears to have marked the founding of the more professionally named America's Counter Cartel Coalition, or A3C. This was actually sort of soft-launched by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth a couple of days prior at another conference in Florida that brought together military leaders and representatives from 16 Latin American and Caribbean nations, who signed up to the coalition alongside the US. But at the Shield of the Americas summit, Trump was joined by 12 leaders, coming from Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guyana, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, and Trinidad and Tobago. The leaders of the Bahamas, Belize, Guatemala, Jamaica, and Peru were not present, but have signed up to the A3C, and confusingly, Chile's president-elect attended the Shield summit, but Chile had not signed up to the A3C because he hadn't been inaugurated yet. Anyway, the Shield of the Americas summit was basically a who's who of the region's right wing, ranging from centre-right to hard-right. Among them, staunch Trump allies like Argentina's President Javier Milei and El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele. However, two attendees stood out somewhat: the left-of-centre leaders of Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the reasons why they've emerged as Trump allies could be a whole separate video, particularly Trinidad, which opened its airports to US military aircraft shortly before the US attack on Venezuela. But we're not going to get distracted by that now. You may have also noticed that 3 regional heavyweights, notably led by left-wingers, have been missing from all this, but we'll come back to that soon. But what is this project all about? In his speech, Trump billed it as a brand new military coalition to eradicate the criminal cartels plaguing our region, and said at the heart of the agreement was a commitment to using military force to destroy the cartels once and for all. The declaration that A3C members signed up to consists of 4 points of intention, mostly on enhancing security cooperation, but also agreeing to advance peace through strength and join a coalition to combat narco-terrorism and other shared threats to the Western Hemisphere. Trump's speech was effectively a call to arms. He called on the attendees to use their armies to smash the grip of the cartels and criminal gangs, and even went further, urging them to bring in the US military for joint operations and assistance. What might this actually look like? Well, Trump, in his trademark style, had this to say.
But we're working with you to do whatever we have to do. We'll use missiles. If you want us to use a missile, they're extremely accurate. Boom. Right into the living room. That's the end of that cartel person. But we'll do whatever you need if you want.
But we actually saw an example of joint military action on March the 3rd, just a few days before the summit, when the US and Ecuadorian militaries launched joint operations against designated terrorist organizations, i.e. drug cartels in Ecuador, with the New York Times reporting that US Special Forces soldiers advised and supported Ecuadorian commandos, who actually carried out the raids. Operations continued on March the 6th, when the US and Ecuadorian militaries carried out joint lethal kinetic operations, or bombed an alleged drug trafficking camp near Ecuador's border with Colombia. This marks an expansion of Trump's military activities in the Americas, which since September has seen more than 40 strikes, widely criticised as illegal, on small vessels in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean that are alleged to be drug trafficking boats, killing at least 157 people. Trump also appears to be hoping that this new initiative can help weaken Chinese influence and boost US influence in the region, a goal of his so-called Don Roe doctrine. A proclamation made by Trump on the day of the summit did not mention China by name, but said the United States and its allies should keep external threats at bay, including malign foreign influences from outside the Western Hemisphere. So, should we expect the Shield of the Americas to be successful? Ultimately, the details are still pretty thin on the ground, and it may be some time before we get a clearer picture of the extent and scope of this new coalition's activities. The aim of eliminating cartels and criminal organisations that cause so much misery is certainly a noble one, but there are significant challenges in achieving it. First, most experts agree that a solely militarised approach is not sufficient in tackling cartels and organised crime, especially if underlying factors behind insecurity are not addressed too, whether they be poverty, corruption, or weak state capacity. Trump did not give any indication that this military coalition would be backed up by any non-military measures. Second, criminal organisations like cartels have proven pretty flexible, capable and adaptable, shifting and relocating their operations within and between countries depending on the pressures they face. So, with only partial buy-in from the region, the risk is that any successes in individual countries could simply see these groups re-establish themselves elsewhere in the region. Additionally, the fact that Latin America's three most populous countries, Brazil, Mexico and Colombia, are not involved is a big hole in the project, particularly as Colombia and Mexico are hotspots of cartel activity. That being said, it's worth pointing out that Mexico and Colombia already have pretty strong experience of bilateral security cooperation with the US. In fact, Mexico's killing of cartel chief El Mencho last month was carried out with US intelligence support, evidence that high-level cooperation can and will take place outside Trump's Shield of the Americas, which Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum is presumably ideologically opposed to joining, given her firm red line that US military action inside Mexico, whether unilaterally or joint, would undermine Mexican sovereignty. However, the absence of Sheinbaum, Colombia's Petro, and Brazil's Lula does highlight the ideological nature of the project, which raises doubt about its longevity. As Dr. Christopher Sabatini notes for Chatham House, Latin America is known for swinging between so-called pink and blue electoral waves, and has a number of largely defunct ideologically inspired multilateral organisations. Is it realistic to expect the Shield of the Americas to survive these ebbs and flows of Latin American politics, especially once the current right-wing ascendancy comes to an end? And finally, as for countering Chinese influence, the reality is that it's a hard task. China has spent years bolstering its position in the region, trading, lending, investing, and financing major projects. While Trump can count some successes, like in relation to the Panama Canal, even his staunchest allies like Javier Milei have avoided choosing between the US and China, preferring to balance their strong Trump ties with trade and economic cooperation with China. Now, if you're one to binge watch our videos, or in fact any news videos recently, it's very understandable that you might feel as though the world isn't super safe right now. You're probably doing all you can to at least feel in control of your online security. You're adding an extra one or capital letter into your passwords. But is that always enough? Well, luckily our sponsor this week, NordVPN, takes your safety seriously and expertly works to protect all of your data online. It's an unfortunate reality that online scams and phishing attacks are on the rise right now. With us getting bombarded by emails from our banks, social media accounts, and constant newsletters we forgot we even signed up to, it's easier than ever to click the wrong thing. But with NordVPN's certified anti-phishing tool, you don't have to worry about your online safety being compromised, as their Threat Protection Pro feature detects at least 85% of phishing websites, blocking millions of scams every single month. Even if one slipped through and you did reach a suspicious website, NordVPN's data encryption tools would protect against a number of other attacks like malicious man-in-the-middle data breaches and intense DDoS attacks. And don't worry, if you're worried about past sensitive information being compromised, NordVPN's dark web monitoring is always scanning for your details and passwords, and can actively notify you before you even notice. Their super handy NordPass feature will even upgrade those old passwords for you and keep them all organised and safe in one place. NordVPN isn't just the fastest VPN on the planet, it's a much needed shield to protect you from all those threats online. So, if cybersecurity is as important to you as it is to us, sign up to NordVPN today. Simply click the link in the description or go to nordvpn.com/TLDR, and not only will you get a massive discount, but you also get 4 extra months totally free. There's no better time to protect yourself. So once again, that's nordvpn.com/TLDR, and it's completely risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee.